Welcome back to the Future Energy Conversations. When we think about what the future of energy looks like, many of us think of solar PV panels. Today, I'm speaking to the team behind a research project that seeks to understand and manage the uptake of residential rooftop solar PV. Hello and welcome to this Future Energy Conversation. My name is Mary Hoare and I'm with the Sustainable Energy Markets Department at the City of Cape Town. With me today, I have Louise Scholtz from the Worldwide Fund for Nature. She's a senior program manager in the Urban Futures area. As well, I also have Karin Kritzinger, who's from Stellenbosch University at the Center for Renewable Energy Studies. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. So together you've done some really thought-provoking research around the uptake of solar rooftop PV in the residential sector. And I'm interested to hear more about that. I hear your briefing paper's just been published. And can you tell us more about the project, Louise?
Hi, Mary. It's great to be here. Yes, Mary, the survey that we're going to be sharing with you today is part of a larger program, Future Electricity Distribution at Local Level, which is funded by the WWF Netbank Green Trust. The focus of this program is to enable municipalities to support the increasing investment in renewable energy, primarily rooftop PV, and also to support them in developing appropriate responses to potential revenue shortfall as a result of the increased uptake. WWF manages the overall program, and Karin is the main technical partner on the bulk of the technical work that we're doing.
Fantastic, thanks. I think what's really fascinating about this research is it starts to unpack some of the future of electricity distribution at a local level. And Karin, I understand one of the first steps was a survey to try and understand what are some of the drivers for solar PV uptake and what are some of the barriers?
Yes, thank you, Mary. Yes, the survey was conducted under households in South Africa, both those who already have PV installed and people who do not have PV installed yet, so that we can try to unpack what the motivating factors are to actually, not just plan it, but actually really install it. So we tested for environmental, social and financial impacts, and by far the biggest motivator was the financial concerns. And what was also interesting was that the ability to pay the upfront capital cost was much more of a motivator than what the future energy saving might be. So affordability was definitely a motivating factor. Then for the social concerns, we definitely realized that people who live in a neighborhood where there already is rooftop PV, people who have colleagues, family, friends who have it installed are much more likely to install it themselves than people who do not who don't know people who already have done it. As for the environmental concerns, you would think that would be a strong motivating factor, but what we found is that was not as strong as the others. Most people are environmentally concerned, but that does not mean that they actually install rooftop PV.
Great. So I think that geographic clustering is really interesting, and it's a little bit like a virus spreading, isn't it? And from the city's perspective or the grid operator, that geographic clustering can be quite problematic. So we as the city require systems to be registered and approved, but I understand that there was an interesting finding there about how many systems are actually registered.
Yeah, across municipalities, the survey's shown that only about 25% of people register their systems. And of course, as you pointed out, Mary, this has quite dramatic impacts on the city's ability to manage their grid properly. It also has safety implications if during maintenance unexpected electricity feeds into the grid. And of course, because of the geographical clustering, you might get increased pressures on the grid that the city can manage if they're aware of it. But of course, if they're unaware of it, they can't take appropriate action.
Absolutely, and I think you're touching on some of the challenges that municipalities face. So while a municipality might support the idea of distributed generation and renewable energy uptake, it's also the municipality's responsibility to make sure that those systems are safe and technically feasible, and that the grid is financially stable. And a big portion of our job is also to make sure that the grid is equitably shared among all of the citizens. So is the answer then for people who can just to go off grid and not rely on the city's network?
I would argue absolutely not. People should actually feed in their excess electricity into the grid to ensure a more sustainable, more resilient grid. And I think most of us that have tried batteries know that they're both expensive and not hassle-free.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the other challenges that also people think about when they're deciding about PV uptake is load shedding. I mean, load shedding is a big problem for all of us. And solar PV is often considered a response to load shedding. Karin, do you think that's something we should be promoting as a load shedding solution?
Well, the one thing that we need to understand is that, yes, I mean, in the bigger scheme of things for the country and the whole grid, of course, if we have a constrained system at lunchtime when the sun is shining, the collective rooftop PV that is feeding back into the grid or actually taking load off the grid would, of course, be a help. As for the individual, the rooftop PV will not assist in load shedding at all. What actually assists is your battery system, and and that battery doesn't care whether it's being charged via the grid or via the rooftop PV. So yes, we need to understand that it's the battery that will protect or help the individual within load shedding, but a lot of PV systems could help the system, a constrained system.
And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that a typical grid-tied PV system actually goes off when the grid goes down. And that's something to remember when you're thinking about putting up a PV system. One of the interesting elements of your research that went beyond the survey was trying to understand the different roles that the individual plays versus the municipality versus national government, and how it looks like sometimes these different entities are at odds with each other. From the municipality's point of view, I'm interested to hear what you think the role the city should play and how we can engage better with those different groups.
Yes, I think many people don't realize that cities have a very particular, or municipalities, in fact, have a very particular constitutional mandate. And that is to provide sustainable services, to support economic and social development, and also to ensure that the city is safe and healthy. And the bulk of these services are being supported by the revenue that cities generate from electricity sales. Should we see in the future a large drop in this revenue because of an increased investment in rooftop PV, this will impact dramatically on the ability of cities to provide these services across the board. It is for that reason that even households that get the majority of the electricity from rooftop PV should be prepared to pay the charges that is due to the municipalities. I think many households don't realize that it costs about 700 Rand a month to keep them connected to the grid. We all want a city that works for everyone. We all want a city that works. And if we want that, we must be prepared to contribute to that outcome.
Thank you, Louise. I think that question of who pays for the grid is a really important question, and it starts down the road of how we design our electricity tariffs to be fair and equitable. But I think tariff design is a whole new conversation that we probably need to leave for another day. Karin, I understand that there was a parallel study happening at the same time as this study that really started looking at some of the technical challenges of mass uptake of rooftop solar PV. Can you tell us a bit more about that project and what questions you were trying to answer?
Yes, thank you, Mary. You're referring to our study that is on the PV uptake in the Western Cape. It was a collaborative research project between UCT, Stellenbosch University, CPUT, the City of Cape Town, and Eskom. And it looked at the technical problems with the uptake of large-scale rooftop PV.
And what was the question you were trying to answer in that project?
Yeah, so the main question was, with large-scale uptake of rooftop PV, what will we run out of? Will we run out of roof space, or will we run out of wires?
And what did you find? We heard some really interesting findings about what drives people to install rooftop solar PV. We also heard how important it is that all systems are registered and approved. This type of technology is one piece of the puzzle of our future energy landscape. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes on our future energy conversations, and we look forward to engaging with you soon.